was a study that was done at the University of Minnesota. They interviewed about hundreds and hundreds of high school juniors and seniors, and they found out that and this is all in your notebook on page 2, so you don't need to be writing all this down, but the kids that had the highest self-worth were those that were coming from authoritative homes, and those that were second highest in self-worth, permissive. Third, self-worth was authoritarian, and fourth was neglectful. Interesting. He said, okay, they don't even care enough to discipline me. What value do I have? Interesting that it turned out that way. Conformity to authority was the other term they used. In other words, these kids cooperated well with teachers, principals, coaches, policemen, other people in authority. Conformity to authority. Number 1, authoritative parents. Number 2, permissive parents, just like up here. Number 3, neglectful parents. Number 4, authoritarian. So these switched when it got down here. What does that tell me? That tells me that an authoritarian parent who is just being inappropriate in the exercise of their authority is going to create kids who will rebel at authority. Okay? You catch that connection there? Like, I've had enough of this at home, and I'm not going to take this from a policeman, from a teacher, from a coach, because this doesn't feel good. The third area was what they called religiosity. How many of these kids follow in your parents' faith? Number 1, again, authoritative. Number 2, permissive. Number 3, neglectful. Number 4, authoritarian. I was doing premarital counseling today with a young lady and her fiance who walked away from the church. And I said, tell me, and from God, basically, to get just mad at God. And it was very interesting to hear her story about authoritarian parents that were all about control and doing things. And, there's just a very natural thing that happens. I mean, we did it too. We kind of have to push back from mom and dad, and we have to go, okay, how am I going to live my life, right? Well, often in that pushback, when you're separating from mom and dad, you're becoming your own person. If you have been in an authoritarian home and your spiritual life has just been forced on you, and you're seeing maybe some hypocrisy going here, in addition to pushing your parents away, you are going to push their faith away also. Okay? So these parents of the girl I know them. I mean, they had very appropriate intentions, sent their daughter to Christian schools, brought her to church, whatever. But there came a time when she was separating, and I just told her, I said, you know what? I'm talking about this tonight with parents of teens, how that, parents, good intentions, but exercised the wrong way can push your kids away from the faith. Fourth, identification with the counterculture. In other words, you don't want your kid to score high on this one, okay? So those that identified with the counterculture, it was tied between authoritarian and neglectful. Permissive was second, and then the least likely to identify with the counterculture were kids that were raised in authoritative homes. Okay, so I just kind of put this on a chart here and put some numbers up here. And so basically I took the summary of what we just saw, and the yellow number is the counterculture number, the one you don't want to score high in. So as you look at this chart, what things come to your mind?
It's better, if you're going to make a mistake, it's better to make it on the permissive side than on the authoritarian side.
Yes! Do you ever think you'd hear that at church? Better to be permissive, Well, yeah, and don't all of us struggle sometimes? Like, okay, we want to be balanced here, but okay, if I'm going to err, should I err by being too hard or too soft in the control factor? Good observation. What else do you notice? Yes, Patty.
Support comes, I mean, that speaks love. And what just strikes me is that's what kids need to know more than anything else, is that they're loved.
That they're loved. Yeah, the primary factor in parenting is love and not control. Do you get that? Okay, it's the ones that are the high support kids are the ones that did better.
And it's not surprising that the counterculture ones would be the two that are low on the love because they're looking for a group to identify with.
Yes.
Because they're not feeling loved.
Who's going to love me? Who's going to... Yeah,
Right.
all of that.
Makes sense.
Good observations, you guys. Anything else? Well, let me just draw... I mean, you guys came up with some great summary statements. And honestly, the best style of parenting is to do what God has done for us. Because doesn't God have laws? Doesn't he say, hey, this is what I want you to do? These are the boundaries. These are the guidelines. And God isn't being bad, and he's not being a killjoy, but he's going, you know what, you guys, I created you, and I created this world for you to live in, and some stuff has gone south since the fall, and I don't want you to get hurt. So let me tell you the best way to live your life is to wait until marriage to have sex, to not steal from each other, to not covet from each other. I mean, just go down the 10 Commandments. Are those things supposed to be restricting people or supposed to be giving them a fulfilling life? And God says, listen, I'm going to have some guidelines for you that you may call the law. However, these things are for your good because I love you. And the loving side of God is that, I remember the first time I really got Romans 8:1. Now, therefore, there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. I mean, God, with all the junk that I've done, is not condemning me for it. And can we say the same thing to our kids? I'm not here to condemn you. I'm not here to judge you, but listen, I love you, and I want you to live a better life than perhaps the one that you're choosing. So the balance between support and control, high support and high control, is exactly what God... Now, when I sin, does God whack me upside of the head with a 2x4? Usually not. Sometimes I suffer the consequences of my sin. Sometimes your kids suffer the consequences of their sin. But does it happen every time? No. And that is God's grace that is being played out. So my encouragement is to parent like your Heavenly Father did. Ephesians 6 has some real wisdom for us, and you've heard this 100 times. Let me reframe it for you a little bit. It says, children, you obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with you, and that you may live long on the earth. Fathers and mothers, let's add that, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. What is it saying? Number one, we need to move our kids from obedience to honoring. The root word, let me see what you have in your outlines here. Yeah, you don't have that. If I am going to obey something, it's usually because I fear the consequence, right? I'm not going to run a red light because I might crash my car or I might get a ticket. I'm going to pay my taxes so I don't get fees added on to my taxes. I'm obeying these things because I fear the consequences. That is the root of obedience, and it's used particularly with younger children to help them learn how to live their lives appropriately. But as our children grow and mature, we need to move from obey, where they fear the consequences, to honoring. I will do this because it pleases you. Patty, you illustrated that perfectly a little while back when you said, when I saw my friends getting in trouble and doing some crazy things, I did not want to go there because I knew what it would do to my parents. Obedience is based upon power. It's based upon your ability to control your child. As your kids get older and smarter and stronger and freer from you, you lose the ability to control. And you know what you have left? You have influence left. Okay? It's influence, and influence is based on relationship. So my question is, what kind of relationship are you engendering with your kids that will give you that influence where they will say what Patty just said, hey, I didn't want to disappoint my parents. I wanted to honor them. Catch the difference? Obedience, I obeyed because I'm fearful of the consequences, is based on power. Honoring, I do out of relationship because my parents have this influence on me. Okay, so the essence of that is, hey, I'm moving from I have to do this, which is obedience, to, you know what, I really want to do this. I really want to honor my parents. And that is a mature response not only in your kids' relationship with you, but in our relationship with God. Am I doing this because I'm fearing what God might do to me? Or am I doing this because I love Him and I honor Him and I don't want to disappoint Him? The last one in there, the last verse is, don't provoke your children to anger. As you have looked at the 4 different quadrants, which parenting style is most likely to provoke a child to anger? Authoritarian. You're going to do what I want to do when I tell you to do it, and I don't care how you feel. The New International Version, the word, instead of provoke, is exasperate. He said, do not exasperate your children. Have I ever exasperated my kids by being unreasonable? Yes, I have. I have. And you probably have too. And that is the counsel to balance the control and the love, to hear them, to understand them. I mean, I was exasperated when my mom wouldn't reason with me about a different way to handle the discipline in that home, and she's just ready to boot me. Did that exasperate me? Yeah. Did that make me mad? Yeah. Did that tell me I was valued? No. And so that is a powerful thing to remember. Am I exasperating my kids? Am I causing them to anger? As your children move through adolescence, we're going to give up control and rely more and more on influence. Remember the story of the horse whisperer last time? And the difference between breaking a horse out of brute force and causing it to submit, and training a horse, just finding out how it responds to you, building a relationship and having it do everything you want it to do, but it's out of training and not out of breaking. So our goal, bottom line, is to be balanced, right? You can't be all love alone. You can't be all control alone. There's got to be a balance. And I have a feeling that that's how Christ is with us. It's we need to be Christ-like in our parenting. And my final comment to you before we go to question is, good parenting doesn't guarantee good children. It only assures that our children have had a tremendous advantage of having had a good parent. I mean, every one of you, by the time you were 20, 25, I mean, you were setting your own course for your life. You were choosing what you were going to do. And your children will too. So just because you are being a great parent doesn't guarantee that they're going to turn out the way you would like them to do. In fact, my wife and I often go, oh my gosh, none of our kids are following the script that we wrote for them. What's up with that? And I stop and I go, I guess I didn't follow the script my parents wrote for me either, you know. So, but hopefully We are still a strong influence in their life, and probably the greatest gift I got last Christmas was all of our kids sat around the living room, and they said, you know what, we're getting old enough, they're in their 30s now, where, gifts and tangible things that you can put in a package aren't as significant as relational things. So let's sit around and let's just talk to each other about what we appreciate about each other. We sat there for an hour and a half to 2 hours, focusing on each member of the family. Just go, this is what we love about you. This is what we appreciate about you. These are some of the best memories we have of you. And we just went around the circle like that. It was the richest Christmas as a dad that I ever had. And I trust that someday your kids are going to be able to sit around that circle and do the same for you. There's times, you hear in Proverbs 31 that her children will rise up and call her blessed. But it's usually after the adolescent years, okay? Get your hopes up, Mom. Okay. So, you got a little homework tonight. The last 2 pages, the last 2 pages that I handed out last week have the lion parent and the lion child. Do you see that one? Or maybe you didn't bring your pages from last week. But basically, what this does is says, okay, if you're this kind of parent and you have this kind of child, here's the adjustments you need to make. So, for example, let me just confess one of mine, and then we'll go to questions. So, go to the beaver page, okay? The beaver parent, drop down to the otter child. All right? The beaver parent and the otter child. Okay, and I'm thinking of my son Jeff, who is the most different one in our family, and just was driving me nuts, and I was driving him nuts because I wasn't parenting him according to his bent. So what I needed to know is that, hey, there's real strengths here, because my love for detail and doing things right is exactly what Jeff needed to be more balanced and successful in life. However, Jeff brought a freshness and a joy to our family that we hadn't had before, because I tend to be a little more serious. Now, the struggles in my relationship with Jeff, if you're tracking with me here, since we are on opposite ends of pace and priority. So pace, I am, let's be methodical, let's get things done. Jeff is, hey, let's do it whenever it feels good. Priority, my priority is task. His priority is having fun. So we're on opposite ends of the spectrum. And so we found it difficult. I found it difficult to figure out, why does he always have this intense need for fun? What's wrong with him? No, Jeff was an otter, and I didn't realize it. Okay? So I need to approve him. I needed to use the one-liners. I need to value him for what he was contributing to our family. And he was contributing a lot. Now, if I had just focused on putting him down and trying to make him conform to me, it would have been disaster. So then there's strategies I could use. So I modify my expectations and so forth. Why don't you find your combination there real quickly and circle it, and then we're going to go to questions. So if you're an otter parent and you have an otter child, circle that one.